Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Optimization Toolbox. My name is Jenna Redfield, and today we have a very special guest, Robert Christiansen. He is the author of The Bug in Our Brain, which I just read a couple weeks ago, and I loved it so much. I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and I wanted to have him on to talk about this topic. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Jenna.
Yeah. So I want to learn, first of all, a little bit more about you and kind of your background, and then also how you decided to write this book, because I think it's so interesting and I'm curious about how the process came to even come up with this idea.
Well, thanks for asking. So I'm a father of three. I've been married 31 years to my soulmate, Kim. Live here in Southern California, in a town called Laguna Hills, California, and been a Southern California person my whole life. My dad, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, my great-grandfather was an immigrant, came from a big, long line of blue-collar workers that worked in the shipyards down here in Long Beach. And so I grew up in the Southern California area, spent a few years in and out of military bases. My dad worked for the government. He was literally a rocket scientist. And so, I kind of grew up with the science around me and that type of thing. But early on, I got into computers. And so when I was 16, I programmed my first computer. And this was a long time ago, 1987, I think. Not 87, excuse me, 77. Wow. Yeah, I'm a little older, yeah. So I'm at the time of this recording, I'm 61, but I have been doing computers for 4 decades, right? So I was a software developer, went into entrepreneurial world when I was in 1997, 98, when I went work for one of the very first venture capital companies that was really booming in the area when it came to tech for small businesses. And so got involved with that, started a startup called Bank Freedom that was a bankless bank, was part of another bunch of technologies that were in the mortgage industry. And one of the challenges I had when I was going through all these startups and these initiatives and things that I was going through was I had this tendency to start something with a bright idea. And I had a lot of energy around it and I would get going. I might have raised some money, or I got I may have joined a crew of people to do something. And as in hindsight, I could see that I was getting close to success or having like a lot more success. And then I would get distracted. I would turn away from it. I would procrastinate, or I would pick a fight with a boss or something like that, just something to quietly self-sabotage the success or not go across the finish line with it. And I would create this small little fire of success. And then I just didn't seem to have what it took to get it to another larger state. And so that would fail, or we'd go off to the side and I'd go do something else. And then my poor wife, I'm dragging her through all of this, right? So that was really, really challenging. And so after about 4 or 5 of these, through I guess all the way up to about my mid 40s, early 40s or so, I really had for lack of a better word, an emotional breakdown. I just collapsed underneath the thought of what's the point? I don't seem to have what it takes to get an entrepreneurial. I had the entrepreneurial bug, and I know I could be successful. How come I can't get it to the next level? I keep banging up against something, upper limit. And then I remember driving here in Mission Viejo, it's down here in Orange County, and I was overcome with this emotion and I just was like, I was like stunned, for lack of better words, like this sudden tectonic shift in my thinking. And I pulled over and I started writing stuff down, and the voice in my head said this is exactly what it said. It says, Robert, the reason you do not keep success is because you don't feel worthy of the success. And when you feel worthy of the success, that's when you'll keep it. And I thought to myself, well, I feel worthy of the success. And then another little voice in the back of my mind says, yeah, but you don't really. You don't really. And I asked myself, well, why don't I really? And I go, I didn't know. I'm a self-help geek, right? I want all changes in my life come from inside me, all changes. if I want to manifest something in my outer world, it's got to start here in my inner world. So, from the inside out, it's how I've always believed. And I know that's so true. I can learn all the tactics, but if I don't believe what I'm doing is working inside me, I won't keep it. I might attain it. Okay, so great. I get a $50,000 commission check from closing a big deal. Great. Do I actually get to keep it? Do I actually get to use it? Can I go apply it someplace? Can I invest it someplace? Can I protect it? So that was a real monumental shift in my belief system. And I struggled for about 2 years trying to understand what was inside me that was holding me back. And, you read my book. So early on in my 20s, I got sober, right? I was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I ended up getting sober when I was 25. And I had a lot of leftover, pretty deep belief systems about who I was, and kind of like I was broken inside a little bit, that I didn't feel worthy of who I was as a father and that kind of stuff like that. So those beliefs were underneath the surface, but they weren't really coming out in how I talked. And so I had to start really looking at my language, the language I used to talk to myself. And I realized, right, about 6 or 8 months later after that, I started realizing, wait a second, I'm talking to myself in this negative language. I'm using this negative language. I'm wondering if that negative language is having an effect on me. So I started digging into all sorts of neuroplasticity, and I started looking at all the work done up at Stanford University. And this was in 2008, 2009, something like that, right? And there was a lot of new groundbreaking work around language and neuroplasticity and neural routes and stuff like that were established when you're a kid, but I didn't know how to change it. Okay. And so what ended up happening was I discovered that through habitual routines of repeating language, that the language I want to have, I could change the neural route pathways in my brain. And that's what I did. And so I ended up changing my whole life through redefining the language that I talk to myself with. And that path put me on to changing my success immediately changed. Immediately started going in a different direction. And then that's when I started authoring the book. And I started putting together, we had masterminds, and we had these different people we were working with, and we had a whole bunch of people testing out on the language and stuff. And then eventually the book got written. And, of course, the name became a bug in our brains, kind of like a programmer, right? So I'm a computer guy, so it's got to be that. So that's how the book came about.
Yeah, that's so gosh, I feel like the biggest thing that really struck me when I read it was like I felt like it was talking to me, which doesn't always happen in a lot of books. Like I was like the things that you were saying, I just so clearly felt in my own self. I don't get emotional because it's just like it really like it was like an awakening for me, because I was like, I didn't realize how much this was issue for me. And I think that you had that same realization in your car when you're driving, that like it is the self-worth. And can you kind of describe what self-worth even is? Like what does that mean to you? And then also what's the I don't know if you talk about this much, like there's self-esteem, there's self-confidence, there's self-worth, there's all these like buzzwords, and I think they each mean something different. Can you kind of explain what that even means? Because I think that just clarifying the language would be good for people to know,
That's perfect. That's a great question. Throughout the last 30 or 40 years, I think the psychiatric or the therapy world has equated self-esteem with self-worth, and they're pretty far apart in my world. Okay. So self-worth and the worthiness I feel for myself is the level of value I place on what I want to attain, where I'm going to go, what I want to possess, and what I want to retain. What I mean by retain is keep. So this can take the form of material possessions or experiences. Okay, so I can have high self-worth around possessions and have very low self-worth around an experience of like intimacy, or being a father, or how I manage my health. All right. So it's not uniform. There's
Mm.
categories of life that have different worthiness
Yeah.
bases. Right. So some societies may value education as a very high self-worth thing, and they all go after education as a demonstration of worth, while at the same time they devalue family connection, community, and self-care. And so when I say, well, if I say, of course, everybody wants more money. Yes, I'm worthy of more money, but the inner voice inside you that allows you to go and say, I am worthy of wealth, or to become rich, or to own a nice home, or to experience a really kick ass vacation. Those push people into areas where their worth is challenged and they don't know how to deal with it. So now I'm saying, hey, I have value, and that value needs to be met by what I receive in experiences or possessions. Okay. So that you can see how the disconnect from self-esteem can get pretty
Yeah.
quick there.
Yeah, because it's so
Right.
self-worth is based off of different categories in your life, and it can
Correct.
be at different levels depending on what maybe triggers for you, or maybe based on your like life experience. How much is it, do you think, like based off of past? Like how, because I think
Oh,
that's the
quite a
biggest
bit.
thing that I struggled with was like, how did I get here? Like I felt like I've had a
Right.
great life. Like how do I have such low self-worth? I don't understand how I got this low. And I'm like, is it external? Like so how do, I guess that's maybe the question is like, how did I get to a low self-worth? That's what I want to know.
So we all have set points. So there's a set point. A lot of these categories are all interwoven together. Like you have what I do for work and what my purpose in life may be the same thing, but they may not be. How I earn money and what I do with the money may be two different things, right? So it's a woven web of different topics and emotions that are all unique to you, Jenna. Your story and your narrative around worthiness is going to be unique to you. So the key here is that you can't compare your narrative to somebody else,
It's true.
because somebody could be sitting on $1 million in cash in their bank account with no debt and have the perfect world set up from a financial security point of view, and have a very low view of themselves around finance, because the narrative in their head, that song of stories in their head, however they got it, is that it's never enough. Okay. And it's never going to ever be enough. And I'll never feel financially secure because when I was 5, my mom and dad used to scream at each other about money. And they would blame each other for spending money, and they would yell at each other for spending money. So if I go spend money, I'm bad. Okay. So you have this narrative in your head that you pick up when you're small. So when we're little, this is one of the things that the folks out of Stanford really were nailing on, is that a lot of these pathways were developed when we're small, when we're little. And Jenna, unless you are sitting there listening to the narrative around you, you're not going to know how you got to where you are,
It's
right? So
true.
there's,
Yeah.
trying to figure that one out is going to be, I encourage you to let that go.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. That's
All
good to
right.
know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How did I get to a certain spot? I know pieces of my story, but I wasn't there when my family were having great times and bad times. I was there imprinting, I was listening, but it all came to shape how I am today. And what I know is that I have set points. So in our practice, in our business, the Durable Innovator is my business around elevating worthiness, right? So the whole company is called the Self-Worth Company. We elevate worthiness in our clients, and we give them an assessment of their self-worth. And the way we do that is pretty interesting. We have them look at the categories and we ask them, how satisfied are you in this category of money? And we're trying to trigger them. We're looking for landmines. Okay. And if we trigger somebody and they balk at it and they go, well, from a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 1. Okay. Well, why are you a 1? And then out comes the negative, right? Out comes the negative narrative. And it has nothing to do with what is physically real. It's what they believe about what's physically real.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
the belief stands between the reality
Mhm.
and how I see it. Right. So a lot of people call that perspective. So
Yes.
what we're trying to do is get a gauge on how do they talk to themselves.
Mm.
And the trick here, the trick is to get them to vocalize what you just said. How did I get it? How come I have something like that? So the language that you were just doing there about yourself is the negative
Mm.
narrative about yourself, right? So therein
Yeah.
lies the smoke that you're trying to deal with.
Mhm.
So we don't survey people so that we can compare them against everybody else. It's a survey of one.
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
your current snapshot right now, almost like a temperature check, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how you doing?
Mhm.
Well, I'm feeling pretty good today about my self-worth. And what we're trying to do is just level people up and up. So that's
Yeah.
how we got to assessing it.
Yeah. And I think that, that's so helpful because I don't think that people realize how much that other voice in their head is so loud because it's always been
Yep.
there. And until you pointed
Yeah.
out, I recently read The Untethered Soul. I don't know if you've read that one. Um, by
I've read that. That's one of my all-time favorite books.
Yeah. So like that was the first time I'd ever really thought about the voice in my head was like it's like your annoying
Yes.
roommate, right? They talk about that like it's like the roommate
Mhm.
that will just constantly nag at you, and that's the other voice in your head. And then the real you is sitting back and listening to that voice, and it's like talks about like how you have to constantly recognize that that voice is talking at you, and that's just sometimes telling you lies. Like it's not always
Yes.
the truth. And I think
Yes.
that so that was the first time I'd ever really thought about that. And then this book kind of talked about it a little bit as well. Is like yours is more about how to reprogram that and how to use like
Right.
the you call it the gift, which is the speaking out loud, which I have started doing. So I have actually started doing the stuff at the end of the book, and I think it has helped. And I think that's so interesting because it's like you have to change the language that you are talking to yourself and kind of is it do you think it's replacing it or is it like subsiding those voices or how does that actually work?
So the gift, what you're talking about is the gift. The gift
Mm-hmm.
was something that also came to me while I was driving. Excuse me. I was driving along and excuse me, and I was like again overcome with this awareness that I need to write a bunch of stuff. I call them downloads, right?
Mm.
Spiritual experiences, the voice of God, the creator tapping me on the shoulder, some angel, who cares, right? I was receiving something that says, you need to write this down, call it the gift, and give it away to every single person you can give it away to. Okay. And it turned out to be 7 readings. And I just was going over this with a crew of people last night that are going through the gift for the first time. And um, the language is so foreign to people,
Mm.
right? To hear
Yes.
this language. So here's one of the first things, right? I'm a gift. Everywhere I go, people are happy to see me. They smile and encourage me at every step. Believers and supporters surround me. When you say that to somebody, and you say that to yourself, that when's the last time somebody called you a
Mm.
gift and that you're surrounded by believers and supporters?
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I had never heard that language before until that day.
Yeah.
Right. And then it goes on to say how awesome you are and that you're beautiful and that you're forgiven and that I believe in divine love. I mean, there's all this
Mm.
stuff, this language that goes deeper and deeper about your worthiness and your value to the world, and you have purpose. And when I heard all that, I was weeping. I was writing it
Mm.
down.
Wow.
And so yeah, this is how it came about. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how else to tell the world other than this was a gift to me that I need to give away. So
Yeah.
what it does, and the work that was done around developing a habitual language talk track. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so let me give you for example. This is one of the best everything. So, how do you take an 18-year-old high school student and turn them into a Marine Corps killer?
Mm.
You put them through 90 days of boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 90 days is this magic number to get habitual behaviors into a human body. You brainwash them. You put them through severe mental durability and resiliency training, and you condition them to the point where they are automatic with yes, sir, no, sir, where to, sir. That's how you do it, right? We're using the same tactic without the physical part, and we're using it to our own benefit. So we are literally brainwashing ourselves into the new belief system and driving into our new neurosynapse pathways the language of higher self-worth, so that wherever Jenna goes in the world and whoever she talks to, it's automatic. I'm a gift. Automatic. Believers and supporters surround me. Automatic. I make 100% perfect decisions. I don't question the past anymore.
There's definitely some of the things that I say in that are like, I don't believe that. Like, as I say it, like, I'm like, right. Like, it's almost like not a trigger, but like, it's almost like it's, I don't know. Like, there's things that I realize certain parts of it that I agree, like, I need more work on in terms of the.
So what would those be? Let's do that now. What would it be?
I mean, let me open it up because I have it on my computer because I look at it in the morning. It was some of it was like to do with business, I would say. Let's see. Like the client
my
ones.
clients.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So the one that I really like. Okay, the one that stuck with me that I do think is true is about decisions and about how every decision is perfect based off of the knowledge that I knew at the time, or however that was said. I think I definitely align with that because I've always struggled with decision making. But after I read that, I was like, that makes sense to me because it's like you can only make a decision based off of what you know and what your gut says. And I think that, if you just dwell on the fact that, oh, I could have made a better decision. Like I think about my past. I'm like, why didn't I do that? Or why did I choose that? It's like, that's what I knew at the time. And I think that it has led me to where I am now. But I'm trying, let me see. I think for me, I have a lot of issues. Again, I don't want to say it out loud because then, it says it, but like the biggest thing is, well, last year, I've talked about this on the podcast. I went through a weight loss journey, and that was based off of kind of the same thing. I saw myself in a picture, and I'm like, no more. I need to make healthier choices for myself. And then I think the thing I kept saying is like, I'm a healthy person. I'm getting in shape. Like it's that mindset of like, I'm not somebody who sits on the couch all day and watches TV. Like I'm someone that goes on walks every day. It's like almost like building your new identity. The other one I struggle with is romantic relationships, and then the other one I struggle with is money. Those are probably like the three, and those are kind of the three things in life, right? Relationships, really, money, and health. It's like they're all three things I struggled with. So I was like, okay, so I feel like I've been slowly building up different skills with each of those things. But I don't know if you said it in the book, but this is how I picture self-worth is like, it's a foundation. And what I've been doing is I've been building an apartment building with all these, stacking all the bricks. And those are all the things that I've been learning. But if you have a shaky foundation, it doesn't matter. And that's what I've realized is once you get the foundation, which is self-worth in place, then all of that will be compounded. And that's how I explain this book to people in my head. I'm like, it's like you have to have the foundation. Yes. And I think that's what I've realized is I've been reading all these self-help books, and they teach you aspects of helping you with parts of your life. But until you get your self-worth in place, it doesn't matter because you can't, it's almost like putting a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. Like unless you plug up the wound, it's not going to work. So I don't know what question that is, but that was just a statement of me that I'm like, that's what I've learned,
That's great. So here's an analogy I think helps a lot of people out, all of our clients and the thousands and the tens of thousands of people who have done this work. We spend a lot of time trying to clear the smoke out of our life, right? The smoke will be procrastination, overeating, sitting on the couch, picking fights with our partners, not going to work out, all of these things that we want to hack to. We want to hack it out, and we're going to go learn science, and we're going to dig something like that to figure out how to treat ourselves better. And I relate that to smoke now, and we're not really getting to what's burning. Okay. So the real fire in my life was low self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
It preceded everything.
Mm-hmm.
Every decision I made
Yes.
was based on a single question. Do I feel worthy of the outcome if I take the next step towards it? It preceded all decisions. And
Yes.
I didn't know that I was asking that question of myself
Mm-hmm.
automatically.
Mm-hmm.
The habitual engine, I call it the routine engine inside
Mm-hmm.
my body, was constantly testing for safety. So human beings are safety first above all things. Okay. And we will risk safety more and more as like we get hungry, outdoors, threats, that type of stuff, but it's safety, emotional safety and physical safety. And that trigger of safety is this outcome, this great potential partner I want to go on a date with. Okay. That partner, do I feel worthy of an outcome
Mm-hmm.
of that partner?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do I trust that the outcome is going to be something that I want? And you may say yes, but if you were raised in an environment or have a self-worth identity that feels that you're not worthy of having a lifetime partner, no amount of hacks, changes, identity stuff, dresses,
Yeah.
clothes, pants, whatever is going to change that. You will eventually destroy the opportunity or simply not even go into it.
I think that's what happens with me. Like honestly, like I just gonna be totally honest. I think it's true in a lot of aspects of my life. And the two things I always called it was guilt. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that has to do with, I mean, that has to do with self worth because it's like I feel
Mm-hmm.
guilty of getting these things.
Yep.
Like it's
Yep.
almost like I avoid doing things because it lessens my guilt if I
Yes.
get them. Because once I feel like a lot of my life, I feel like I've gotten things I haven't deserved. That's my maybe my trigger is like I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
why did I get this? I didn't deserve this. Like it was given to me, and it's like the life I live. I'm like there's so many people that are struggling that
Why you?
why did I, yeah, why am I
Yep.
lucky enough? Like, I don't,
Yep.
it's almost like I have luck, but I didn't want it. And there's some ways where it's almost like I was like, I don't understand how this happened to me and why I'm so fortunate. It's almost like that guilt of it. And that's where I think my
Big
worthiness
piece.
comes from is like, it's like people look at me and they're like, oh, you're so lucky you have all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't think I deserved it. And that's maybe where and so maybe that's like I don't know if that's like another. It's like almost like
It
opposite end
is.
of the spectrum.
No, 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 no. You're talking now another piece of this, which is the critical piece of worthiness,
Mm,
raising worthiness. And this is a part of the technology I want to really take a moment and explain.
yeah.
When we exceed our worthiness set point,
Mm,
everybody has like this. So let's draw an imaginary line right here. Here's the imaginary line. And it says right there is Robert Christiansen's worthiness around money and financial security. Okay.
mm-hmm.
And I work. I invest. I do all the great things like that. And all of a sudden, I don't know where it is. Okay, this is the key thing. I can
Mm-hmm.
get a set point and
Yes.
understand where it is in me, but unless I clip past it, I don't know where it is. So I clip past it, and all of a sudden, I have more money than I've ever had before. I have no debt, and my wife and I are planning trips and buying cars for cash.
Mm,
Okay, and so I literally found myself in that position. Okay,
mm-hmm.
and I was up here and now we were in a space that is uncharted and all sorts of emotions started flying off the hook.
Mm,
Guilt was a big one. It was a
mm-hmm.
leader.
Mm-hmm.
It was imposter syndrome
Mm-hmm.
and oh, I'm leaving behind my friends who don't have the kind of money they can't go on the trips with and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a whole bunch of bad behaviors that started showing up. My wife and I started fighting out of no apparent reason. I acquired credit card debt and kept it there while I had the cash.
Mm,
Okay. And I didn't know that this was happening to me in the
mm-hmm.
sense. And then I discovered that that trigger is a trigger that I've worked through and I've named the red zone. And then in the red zone, you have this need to punish ourselves for the
Mm-hmm.
gift that we
Mm-hmm.
received. And when you punish yourself, when you receive a gift that you don't believe you're worthy of receiving, there has to be a corresponding punishment or sacrifice. And this is old as time for human beings. Every culture around the globe since man could make fire has had the concept of sacrifice for a gift. Okay. So if I get an undeserved gift, there comes an there needs to be a sacrifice somehow. And our psychology is so bizarre in this sense. I don't have any control over what I do then. It will be sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. The next thing I know, I'm sitting in front of the television set with a half a pint of Ben and Jerry's, consuming the whole thing, and I don't know how I got there. Which is the trigger for me. I'm a big sugar person,
Yeah,
right?
same.
So what I'm telling you here, this is the second part that was unknown. And if you look at so many famous people who lived in the red zone that didn't know it and that destroyed their success, it is by the thousands.
Yeah.
Okay. And so don't feel alone.
Yeah.
The guilt of success, the pain of success, the sacrifice of successes, and the unworthiness that comes with it is called the red zone. All right. Okay. So now you have some language to go with it. Number two, having a community of people around you who understand the technology of the red zone is the key. Having people that you can go to talk to and literally say this: I'm killing it, I'm crushing it, and I don't feel good. I wake up with, like, in the morning with somebody, it feels like they're standing on my chest because I can't breathe. I look at myself in the mirror and I say, you're a jerk, or you're going to use some more foul language, right? Whatever I would talk, that's how I talk to myself. You don't deserve what's coming your way. And the reality is I needed to go tell somebody that. Our society is not set up for us to go vent about our successes. We're not set up for it. So we quietly self-sabotage and suffer. Okay. And I want to break that. I want to break that. I want to tell Jenna, hell yeah, you're succeeding. Tell me about what you're dealing with in your red zone. What are you dealing with? What's your red zone bait? What's your red zone behaviors? What are your emotions? And there's three levels. There's emotions, anxiety, free-floating fear. There's procrastination, depression, like type of thing. All those emotions, you're going to feel those anyways. That's level one. Level two is what I call small bad B behaviors, small bad behaviors. Procrastination, overeating. You could pick maybe gambling, right? Some people turn to pornography. You have flirting with alcohol, right? Drugs, recreational drugs, those kind of things. You can go on and on, challenging behaviors in society, whatever that is that works for you. There's all sorts of categories with a small b. And if that's not in check, it moves to big B behaviors. Okay, big bad behaviors, what I call the three B's. And the big bad behaviors include, like, addictions to all sorts of things, right? So you can have infidelities, right? You can have theft. You can have people like Michael Vick. If you remember Michael Vick, he was a quarterback and he got involved with dogfighting, right? Come on, he was at the top of his game. All right. And what did he do? He burned it all down doing that. I thought to myself, oh my God, there's the red zone. We have who was the guy that slapped Chris Rock?
Will Smith.
Will Smith. Yeah. He knew he was going to win the Oscar. Word was out.
Yeah.
Okay.
He ruined it. Yeah.
Nobody remembers him from winning the Oscar. He took the red zone bait. He took it and he destroyed everything.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I feel like this is something we don't talk about enough. Is the self? It's because you're right. It's self-sabotage. No one sabotaged them. They did it themselves.
That's right.
You're right. They hit that threshold of success, and they're like, I got to go down. Like I can't go higher, so I'm going to almost lower it because I don't feel worthy. And I think I do that a lot. One of the things I do, which I don't know if this is part of this, but I'm a big people pleaser. And I think that has to, and as I read this book, I'm like, I know other people pleasers too. They've told me, I've mentioned I'm a people pleaser. They're like, I am too. I'm like, okay. But I think that has to do with worth, because we're looking at other people's view of us and how they view their opinions are so important to us that we can't build our own self-worth enough that we don't care, right,
We
of
lack
what other
boundaries.
people think. Yes. And so can you talk about that? I don't know if you mentioned that much in the book, but like that to me is one of my biggest struggles.
Yeah, so that's going to show up in the level one about, well, what are they going to think about me if I don't do this?
Yes.
So you're in the red zone, level one, and I'm in a level one emotion. Okay, I if I say no to them, or I tell them what I think, they're not going to want me, and I will feel left out and excluded.
Yes, yes, yes. That is
Okay,
definitely my trigger.
okay, right. So yeah. By the way, I'm a people pleaser too, so
Okay.
I
Yeah,
understand. Okay,
yeah.
number two level then shows up in compromising my boundaries and saying yes to things I don't
Yes.
want to say yes to. All right. So now I'm not an agent of my own time. I don't have agency over my life. I feel like I get pulled all these different directions that I don't want to go. I don't know where my day goes. And it dissolves. Level three is about people who can get completely lost in their life and are attached to partners that are abusive. They're attached to heavy codependency issues, right? Might be involved in really bad sexual behaviors, right? Just a lot of it slopes down pretty hard,
Yeah.
that area. So catching yourself in level two is the key. All right. So as you raise your worthiness, one of the phrases in the gift is that I place my welfare first and I act accordingly. All right. So when you say that you have high self-worth, naturally your boundaries start becoming more and more clear. It's a natural effect. Okay. It happens as a result of feeling I am worth protecting and I have a voice. My voice matters and I feel worthy of expressing it. And if it means compromising my voice to go with you, I won't do that.
And I think I need to work on that because that's something I struggle with. And I've seen it now. I think that's the one thing that after reading this book is I'm seeing where I have a lot of, I don't know if it's habits of doing that, or I'm like, oh, this is something I have let go too long for example, I never did sponsorships in my business because I didn't think it was worth it. Like I didn't think that people, were worth that sort of thing. So anyways, how do we find you on social media or on your website or your book? Can you kind of sum that up and
Sure.
then,
Yeah. So the great thing about going higher self-worth is that my partners and I and our employees, we have a business called the Durable Innovators at durableinnovator.com. And we are the self-worth company. Right. So the self-worth company, we bring self-worth into businesses and help, newly established entrepreneurs, startups, anybody who feels that they want to take a more leadership role in their life and to elevate their self-worth. So we offer a program that goes into businesses to elevate the leader's worthiness, which hugely corrects so many problems in business, by the way. Oh my God, it's just stunning. So we have a lot of businesses right now that we do it for, and it's epic. It's epic. And we do that privately as well. So I also have a book called The Bug in Our Brain. It's on Amazon. It's in all the formats, from Audible for people who like to listen, etc. I also have quite a number of meditations, and the gift itself is available for free on Insight Timer.
Oh, I love Insight Timer. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my
you can go.
gosh.
So I'm a
That's
meditation
amazing.
teacher.
That's
Meditation teacher on there. Yeah.
wow. Okay, I didn't know that. I have to find that because I use
Yeah.
Insight Timer all the time. That's crazy.
Well, there's the gift is in there, and it's also in
Wow.
Spanish as well.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Good to know.
Right. And we'll be releasing the gift app, a Windows, Windows, God, a
iPhone and Android.
iPhone and Android application, right? That'll be in the store probably sometime in July, right? Is our thing. And what it will do is it gives you the gift, plus you get to load in your own personal success statement in it, and you'll be able to read it. It tracks how many days go on, and it keeps you on track for the whole 90 days. It'll have some videos with it. It has some nice things about how to go through the practice. I'm really stoked about that.
That's awesome. I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing is tracking it and
just knowing I'm doing it, right? Making sure, hey, it's been 5 days since you did the gift. What's going on? That type of thing.
I feel like I have to add it to my calendar.
Yeah. I wrapped up the Motive for Life podcast. I did almost
Mm,
125 episodes of that
yeah.
last year. I wrapped it up, and then we're transitioning into a new podcast here coming up in a little bit.
Nice.
And then there's also a higher self-worth workbook called the 90 Days to Higher Self-Worth. That's also on Amazon. That's a 90-day workbook.
Oh, I need to get
Okay.
that.
And yeah, so it's every day you do something, and the goal
Yeah.
here is to put that into the app as well. But you can also reach me at robert@durableinnovator.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram at Robert Motive on Instagram, and always posting something. But LinkedIn is the biggest place where I'm at right now. So you can
Yeah.
go on Robert Christiansen and LinkedIn. You'll find me there. I'm always posting 2 or 3 times a day about
Gotcha.
motivation and how to live
Awesome.
self-worth.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. This was such a great conversation. And I really think people are going to get a lot out of this because I
Oh,
think
I'm
it's a
glad.
topic that I haven't covered before and I probably haven't even talked much about in my life besides my closest friends. So definitely a lot you'll learn about me in this episode too. So
I did, and
awesome.
I'd love to come back. I'd love to visit you if you want to
Yeah, for
talk about more
sure.
about this and
Yes,
go deeper.
I would absolutely love you to come back and especially based off of feedback that I get and I would love
Yeah,
to see what people want to learn more about. So awesome. Well, thank you so
right.
much and I'll talk to everyone next week. Bye.